All right, Jan, thanks for accepting this interview and being with us at Archifeed. Let me start with this first question. What made you want to pursue architecture?
So I started as a fashion designer in my undergrad, and I've always been taught critical thinking because I come from a house, my mom's an architect and my dad's an engineer. So it was always in my house to talk about space and environment. And I think they always questioned if I would ever consider a field that could not limit my knowledge about design and expand it. And I was always interested in architecture because my mom. So I switched to architecture in my undergrad, and I did a minor in fashion. But as the career went on, I just fell more and more into architecture. I mean, I'm still interested in fashion, but more in terms of how the environment affects people that wear clothes and stuff like that. So,
Would you see yourself one day trying to combine both professions in what you're doing, or would you see yourself not really going back to fashion?
yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I kind of forced myself to not leave my passion for fashion, but slowly it has kind of faded away. I found like so much more other interest in music, but the culture of design still is aligned with my work, whether it's fashion, I guess, but it's more the culture than the object itself. I think that's what I'm more interested in now, but things change always.
How has your understanding of architecture evolved since you started your journey?
I think I'm starting to take it less serious. I think architecture sometimes is perceived as, building structure, scale, and even though it's important, I think stepping away from that gives you an opportunity to enjoy it more. Because I think like education in architecture and the practice itself has to be different. Especially that's what we're always taught in GSAPP. At Columbia, I mean, as you have also experienced, is so dynamic and so like different than the practice itself. And I think that's important when it comes to learning about architecture than practicing it. So for me, it's been evolving more to take it more as a curious eye than what needs to happen. I think that's
What is the
how I've
most
switched.
unexpected thing you've learned at GSAPP so far?
I think it's in reference to what I've been mentioning before, because I came with the idea that I'm going to be designing for spaces and making residencies and buildings for people, even though I've still been doing that. I remember my first semester, I was just like looking at crits of my students, that like my colleagues, I guess, and I was like, what are they doing? It's so different. And at first I was so scared that I wouldn't understand that. Like I would see like roller coasters or just like massive buildings that I guess were more hypothetical than like realistic. And I started to switch that in my designs, and it kind of freed me from the ideal architecture path. Yeah, I think that was surprising for me coming into GSAPP. I think when I started Parsons, I had like no preconception of architecture. Even though my mom is an architect, I never knew what architecture was. So having no preconception is easy when you're starting a career, because you kind of start to fill your own education with your professors. You have no knowledge where you're coming into. But coming into Columbia was so hard to rewire my brain because I thought that I knew what I was doing already.
Yeah.
But it was so challenged, and I had to kind of go back to what I knew and reframe it in some ways. So that's, I guess, what I was surprising coming here.
What are some of the major challenges you faced so far in your architectural career, and how did you overcome them?
I think it was mostly separating my own voice in architecture in the projects that I'm implementing. I think in architecture it's sometimes hard to separate like your aesthetic, not necessarily your aesthetic, but also your ideals and what you believe your voice is in architecture. But sometimes when you're designing for something specific, you need to step away from what you think should be there and what is actually needed to be there. So that was very challenging, because sometimes they would give me space and I was like, okay, well, I like the color blue and it has to be blue because I love blue, but it doesn't make sense in context. So I think that is so challenging. It's kind of like stepping away from your ego and in a way being like an actor, and in every different place you kind of changed the way you design, because I don't think architecture should be so modular. I think it should be different and dynamic in every place that you go to, because it's a response to something.
Yeah.
So that was challenging, and I think just going back to who I'm designing for is a way to direct my design ideals into what I'm now doing, like designing for.
Yeah. What's the biggest lie you've been told about becoming an architect?
I thought about this a lot, and I think, at least in American education, that architecture has so much to do with math. And that was kind of a lie for me. I still don't know how I feel about this, because there should be more math applied. But at least from my own experience in education here, they make us think so free and driven that there's no constraints to structure, at least in the beginning. So that was kind of a lie, that there was a lot of math.
If you could bulldoze one famous building that was done by an architect, which one would it be?
It would definitely be the Vessel. I hate that building. I really don't. Well, it's not even a building to begin with. There's safety constraints. There's no real function. And it's just, it's not inclusive to people around it. I don't know, there's no point. It was $200 million to make, and I don't know, sorry to whoever likes this.
If you could redesign a building that was drawn by a famous architect, which one would it be?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know exactly, like, in terms of like iconic and like built by a really famous architect, but when I was looking at the Vessel and that I didn't want it there, I also thought of what was there, and I really don't like, well, I wouldn't say don't like, but I think it should be redesigned, the Hudson Yards Mall, and it's near the Vessel, it's in that area, so it's right after the High Line, and to me, it's like not an enjoyable space to be in, and it doesn't really consider the surrounding aspects, because I feel like there's been a lot of successful mega development projects in New York, like Essex Market, or for example Seaport Market in downtown, like near Financial District, and I think these two projects really spoke to the surrounding. For example, you have Seaport Market, that it speaks to the port, and like everything that's there is in response to that. And Essex Market has affordable housing, and it feels like the Hudson Yards tried to do that. And I'm not saying it wasn't successful, because I mean the High Line is very successful in my opinion. I like to go there a lot, and the Shed, I enjoy the Shed too, is like the museum space there. But the mall just seems like it was kind of like an added in, also like the Vessel, and it wasn't like a composition that was thought through before, and everything wasn't developed at the same time. It was kind of just scattered around. So I would like redesign that space, because I feel like it isn't a tourist attraction, but it doesn't feel like a local attraction, and I think that's important when you're creating these architecture spaces too.
Yeah, and I feel like it has such an important location in New York,
yeah.
So I think that also plays a big role. What are your career plans after graduating from GSAPP?
I have 2 career paths. I'm really interested in hospitality and development. I And I'm also really interested in acoustic design. So it feels like they're very apart and they're very different and they could take different roles. But I'm trying to find a way to combine them together, because hospitality is a customer experience space that you create for the audience. And then the acoustic side is also that experience for people. So I'm finding ways to maybe combine them together. So hopefully, I don't know.
Are you thinking about staying here in New York?
I want to. I've been here for 6 years, so it only feels right to work here also,
Yeah.
at least for a little bit.
Any advices you would give to a high school student who would want to pursue architecture?
Yeah, I think for me, studying architecture for about 6 years now, I kind of wish someone had told me to be more hyper-specific in my interests, because I feel that we live in a world where the more niche you could be with your interest or your passion, not necessarily more successful that you'll be at it, but I think you'll master it more. And I think it's not about sometimes how many things you can do, but how good you can do something. So through my architecture path, like I've been interested in fashion, I've been interested in acoustic, I've been interested in real estate. And even though it's been interesting to, you know, have so many options, it's been so overwhelming. So I sometimes wish the hyperfixation would have been advised. So, yeah.
Before ending this interview, I wanted to ask you, why did you choose to combine real estate with architecture? Like, where did that choice actually emanate from?
Because I think I felt so limited to understanding how these spaces are built, who's consulting them, who's funding them, who are the people that are bringing in the architects. And I really wanted to understand that world through a different lens. I felt like I was limited to my own capability of just being the designer. I'm really interested in the financial part of it.
Yeah.
I think the economy is such an important skill to have, and I just wanted to know more about it and the people in it, in the industry.
Super interesting. Jen, thank you for accepting this interview. It was great.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
You